just like desire trees, fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls. Jai, Vanchakal Patarupyascha, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
That's off. All right. All right, it's working. Okay. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janabalaba Girivarudagute Gopi Janabalaba Girivarudagute Yasudhanandana Prajajanarandaguna Yasudhanandana Prajajanarandana Yamuna Tera Manachari Yamuna Tera Panachari Jairadu Madhava Kunyaviragade Jairadu Madhava Kunyaviragade Gopinana Madhava Girivaragute Gopijana Madhava Girivaragute Yasudhanandana Prajajanarandana Yasudhanandana Prajajanarandana Gunatera Manachari Yamuna Tera Bharachari Jai Hurad Umadhava Kunyaviragari Jai Hurad Radha Umadhava Kunda Bihati. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Paravedikacharya, also Teta Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Hridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shitwaiti Kadatha Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kun Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai. Jagannatha Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai. Shrimati Lasadevi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Pasyacha Dejatarni. So today we are reading from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 38th chapter, text 34. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ratat Turnam Avaplutya Saha Akuraha Sneha Vivolaha Papata Charanopante Danda Vad Rama Krishnayo Rataturnam Avaplutya Sokrurasneha Vivolaha Papata Charanopante Dandavad Rama Krishnayo Rataturnam Avaplutya Sokrurasneha Vivala Vapata Charanopante Dandavadrama Krishnayo Rataturnam Avaplutya Sokrurasneha Vivala Pata Charanopante Dandavadrama Krishnayo. Okay. Ratat, from his chariot. Turnam, quickly. Avaplucha, climbing down. Saha, he. Akrura, akrura. Sneha, by affection. Vivolaha, overcome. Papata, fell. Chadana upante, next to the feet. Dandavat, flat like a rod. Ramakrishnayo, of Balarama and Krishna. Translation: Akrura, overwhelmed with affection, quickly jumped down from his chariot and fell at the feet of Krishna and Balaram like a rod. You can repeat. Akrura, overwhelmed with affection, quickly jumped down from his chariot and fell at the feet of Krishna and Balaram like a rod. I said like a rod. All right, anyway. So, there's no commentary by the servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, so I'm going to read the short commentaries of Srila Jiva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. So Jiva Goswami states when he came near, he jumped down from the chariot and walking a few steps forward, fell down close to the feet of Krishna and Balaram because he was bewildered by intense prema in dasha bhav. That means the mood of servitude. Sneha bivolaha. The meaning is this: when Akrura first saw Krishna, he did not jump off his chariot because of the bewilderment of his prema. By that bewilderment, he was not aware whether he was on the chariot or on the ground. And with mind and eyes attracted to that form, he attained a more favorable view as the chariot, pulled by the horses, moved quickly towards the Lord. As he got closer, the same bewilderment of prema was the cause of his jumping from the chariot. When he was far away, he did not realize that he was in a higher position in the chariot. When he got close, he realized this. Recovering awareness, he developed respect and thus jumped from the chariot. Though it was not proper for him to offer respects on the ground since he was a senior, he did so because of the bewilderment of prema. And Sanatana Goswami, he who for a long time desired to see the two boys in Gokula, or he who had developed many desires, saw, fell on the ground somewhere or somewhat near the feet, without consideration of rules, because he was confused by prema. Balaram is mentioned first because Balaram, as the eldest, was situated in front when they came forward to meet Akrura. It's very interesting. Rataturnam avaplucha sokruraksne avivalaha papata charanopante dandavad Rama Krishna yo. So Om Gana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shilakaya Chakshur Unmiditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So some things here may be a little bewildering for the Western mind, especially when there's a discussion of etiquette, seniority, like that. You know, for the Western mind, you know, etiquette, seniority. I mean, I've seen in many cases the children call the parents by their first name. They say, oh, instead of Matashri or Pitashri, they'll say, hey, Susie, or Bob. And then they'll, it's like that in the Western world. There's no question of hierarchy or etiquette. I mean, in certain cases there may be. But in general, it's pretty much a level playing field, isn't it? So when you hear about these items of etiquette, I mean, of Akrura, he was quite old, much older than Krishna. And Krishna was the one, usually, according to etiquette, who should have just touched the feet of a Krura. Instead, you find a Krura offering dandavats at Krishna's lotus feet. So I want to cite certain instances of etiquette to show how important it is in the Vedic system. And first I'm going to read from a quote from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Anjalila, and then I'm going to cite some examples of etiquette that show how important it is. And then I'm going to actually, after I read a quote from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the first item of etiquette that I'm going to cite is from the Srimad Bhagavatam in the discussion between Uddhava and Vidura. And Prabhupada makes a very heavy point in this particular purport. So from the Anjalila, chapter 4, text 129, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says to Sanatana Goswami, "My dear Sanatana, although you are the deliverer of the entire universe, and although even the demigods and great saints are purified by touching you, it is the characteristic of a devotee to observe and protect the Vaishnava etiquette. Maintenance of the Vaishnava etiquette is the ornament of a devotee." Very important verse. And then from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I actually didn't write down the citation here, but maybe someone remembers the exact verse, but there's a discussion between Vidura and Uddhava, and Vidura wants to take instructions from Uddhava, but Uddhava says, no, you should actually take instructions from Maitreya. And we're going to hear the exact statement of Uddhava here. Sri Uddhava said, "You may take lessons from the great sage, learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby and is worshipable for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead, while the latter was about to quit this material world." Of course, Uddhava was there at the same time. So Uddhava could have given that same information. I forget the exact number of the verse, but anyway, I'm sorry. I should have written this down. So the purport, Prabhupada talks about something called Maryada Vyatikrama. Maryada Vyatikrama means overstepping, basically, the etiquette, ordinary etiquette, which we in the Western world, as I said before, don't consider so important. But in Vaishnava culture, it's considered very important. I mean, before I read this purport, I just want to give some examples from Prabhupada's life. For example, one time, this is a memory, Prajuna Prabhu, my dear godbrother, was speaking on the memory series, and he said that once upon a time, he was with Prabhupada, and he went in Prabhupada's room. While Prabhupada was giving a darshan, he sat down in front of a devotee who was senior to him. You know, you think, everybody sits down. Of course, don't worry now, don't start shifting around, we don't want to have, Adipurusha move to the back, and actually Tulsi's pretty senior. Mother Urmila moved right here. No, God, no, please. Save me from it. No. I got enough problems. So, but it was a darshan. There's an informal darshan in Prabhupada's room. And Prabhupada said to Prajuna Prabhu that, no, get in back of this godbrother. He's senior to you, maybe by a few months. So, and then Prabhupada started talking about how in the Gaudiya Math, and this may appear to be really artificial for those of us who are raised in the West. It's, what? When were you initiated? July 14th, I was initiated July 1st. I'm senior to you. When did you take sannyas? I took sannyas. Yeah, anyway, whatever. So then Prabhupada cited the example of his godbrother, who actually didn't do too well in Krishna consciousness, Kunja Bihari. Not just Kunja But Prabhupada said that everybody in the Gaudiya Math, since he was the senior godbrother, would call him Kunja Babu. You know, like father, respectable title. Babu was a respectable title. So they were, even though they were all godbrothers. It's interesting, isn't it? And you may think, you know, what? This is artificial. What? Actually, there's a reason for it because it structures society. You know, it's not, obviously, it's not like a spiritual hierarchy that someone who was initiated before someone else is going to be more spiritually advanced than someone else. But it establishes order in society. It's like, you know, the traditions that Arjuna was talking about in the Bhagavad Gita when he was trying to argue against fighting and killing his relatives. They keep society, they're the glue that keeps society together. You know, they're external, yes, not eternal, but they keep society together. Now let me read Prabhupada's purport. Although one may be very well versed in the transcendental science, one should be very careful about the offense of Maryada Vyatikrama, or impertinently surpassing a greater personality, even by age. So, you know, who's to say it? Maitreya, Uddhava. I mean, Uddhava's probably on a higher level than Maitreya. But Maitreya Muni is much older. According to scriptural injunction, one should be very careful of transgressing the law of Maryada Vyatikrama, because by doing so, one loses his duration of life, his opulence, fame, and piety, and all the blessings of the world. To be well versed in the transcendental science necessitates awareness of the techniques of spiritual science. Uddhava, being well aware of these technicalities of transcendental science, advised Vidura to approach Maitreya Rishi to receive transcendental knowledge. Vidura wanted to accept Uddhava as a spiritual master, but Uddhava did not accept the post because Vidura was as old as Uddhava's father, and therefore Uddhava could not accept his disciple, especially when Maitreya was present nearby. In other words, Vidura was actually older than Uddhava. So even though, you know, physical age or, you know, external age is considered important, the rule is that in the presence of a higher personality, and here we're talking about higher in terms of even just the age, one should not be very eager to impart instructions, even if one is competent and well-versed. So Uddhava decided to send an elderly person like Vidura to Maitreya, another elderly person, but one who was also well-versed because he was directly instructed by the Lord while the Lord was about to quit this mortal world. Since both Uddhava and Maitreya were directly instructed by the Lord, both had the authority to become the spiritual master of Vidura or anyone else. But Maitreya, being elderly, had the first claim to becoming the spiritual master, especially for Vidura, who was much older than Uddhava. One should not be eager to become a spiritual master chiefly for the sake of profit and fame, but should become a spiritual master only for the service of the Lord. The Lord never tolerates the impertinence of Maryada Vyatikrama. One should never pass over the honor due to an elderly spiritual master in the interest of one's own personal gain and fame. Impertinence on the part of the pseudo-spiritual master is very risky to progressive spiritual realization. Very heavy. So, as far as more examples of this etiquette, you know, elder, younger, the most famous example is the example in the relationship between Lord Ramchandra and Lakshman. That Lord Ramchandra and Lakshman, they're actually the same person. Advaita Chuta Nadi Udananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Laviyovanam Cha. There's one God. But Ram appeared as the elder brother, and Lakshman had to listen to everything he told him to do. In fact, the etiquette between the older brother and younger brother is that the elder brother has to be the one that gets married first, isn't it? You don't know if they follow it. But that was the etiquette. So therefore, in the, you know, Sita Swayamvar, you have Lord Ramchandra marrying Sita Devi, and then Lakshman, Bharat and Shatrugna marrying according to their order of seniority. So of course, Lakshman didn't like this, but he still followed it. And he was so upset with this etiquette, or with having, not the etiquette per se, but with having to follow his older brother, that he begged Lord Ramchandra that he would not take birth as Lord Ramchandra's younger brother in future, or appear, let's say, to be more precise, in future pastimes. And of course, we know in the future pastimes he appeared as the elder brother, but whether the younger brother followed or not, that's another subject matter we'll talk about in a second. And then we also have the example of Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami, who are both equally qualified, but because Sanatana Goswami was the elder brother, just externally, physically, then Rupa accepted him as his spiritual master. Another example of etiquette is that Prabhupada sometimes would criticize his godbrothers, and Prabhupada would say that we should never criticize or say anything harsh about his godbrothers. Another example of etiquette from the Chaitanya Charitamrita is that once upon a time, Jagadananda Pandit instructed Sanatana Goswami, because Sanatana Goswami, he was feeling really bad. He had these sores over his body, and he wanted to, first of all, he wanted to leave his body, but Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forbade him from jumping under the cart during the Rath Yatra ceremony. But then he wanted to leave and go to Vrindavan, and Jagadananda advised him in that way. And Lord Chaitanya was upset at Jagadananda Pandit, and he says, "You are actually qualified even to advise me." And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so upset with Jagadananda Pandit for violating that etiquette, he even shortened Jagadananda Pandit's name when he was referring to Jagadananda Pandit. He says, "Not Jaga. He's just a young boy." So another example of etiquette from following etiquette, and then I'm going to give some examples of not following etiquette, is Lord Chaitanya getting angry at Vallabhacharya because Vallabhacharya offended Sridhar Swami, who was the original commentator on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Lord Chaitanya said that Vallabhacharya was more or less like a prostitute because he was criticizing some of the commentary of Sridhar Swami. Swami means, of course, husband, and also means master. Another example of etiquette is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu respecting Advaita Acharya, bowing down, respecting him as a superior. And we'll get to a contrary example in a second. Oh, bye-bye. Another example of etiquette, Lord Chaitanya following etiquette, is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not confronting or, let's say, countering any of the criticism of Ramchandra Puri. Ramchandra Puri was the godbrother of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master, Ishwara Puri, and Ramchandra Puri came to Jagannath Puri, and he was criticizing Vaishnavas and criticizing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, criticizing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for eating too much, criticizing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for eating too little, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reduced his eating, and basically creating havoc in the devotees' lives. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never violated etiquette by criticizing Ramchandra Puri. So these are examples of how important it is to follow etiquette. Now, sometimes etiquette can be violated, as in the case we're reading about today, because of ecstasy or because of a need for service, an impending need for service. So here's some examples. Impending need, of course, the typical one, and the most important one, is the Bhagavad Gita. The etiquette is you're not supposed to kill, you're supposed to honor your grandfather. Certainly you're not supposed to kill him. Certainly you're not supposed to kill your guru, your teachers either, right? I mean, that's obvious etiquette. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, text 4, Arjuna is saying, how can I kill these people who are worshipable by me? These guru, the grandfather, And Krishna is encouraging them to kill them. So there's a higher principle there. You know, the principle of service, the principle of carrying out the Lord's order. Another example of a violation of etiquette for service is when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was lying across the doorway of the Gambhira. Gambhira was the place where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was staying in Jagannath Puri. And Govinda had a service of massaging Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu every day, and Govinda couldn't massage him because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was blocking the doorway. And so what Govinda did was something that violated etiquette, was that he put a cloth over Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's body and stepped over Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then massaged him. But when it came time for taking his prasadam, which he would have had to take outside the room to step back over Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he didn't do that. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back to external consciousness, he said to Govinda, "Why didn't you go take prasadam? Why are you still sitting there?" And Govinda said, "I was willing to violate etiquette or, commit an offense for service, for your service, but not for my own sense gratification." So, so there's a fine line there as far as etiquette is concerned. Another violation of etiquette we mentioned is in connection with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu respecting Advaitacharya. But when Advaitacharya started speaking what? Impersonal philosophy from the Yoga Vashishta, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took Lord Nityananda with him, and they went to Shantipur, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu basically beat up Advaitacharya. He was pummeling him. I mean, isn't that a violation of etiquette? I'm not saying you should do that. But, sometimes I remember one time Prabhupada was talking to an elderly professor, and Prabhupada directly called him a demon. He said to his disciple at this point, I forget the exact exchange, he said, "What do we call people like that, or what do we call the philosophy like a demon?" Prabhupada said, "Yes, demon." So, and it's definitely etiquette. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was beating up Advaitacharya, pummeling him. And Sita, his wife, Advaitacharya, his wife, said, "You're going to kill the old man." And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "I don't care." And then what happened is that Advaitacharya became happy, and then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew it was actually a trick. Other violations of etiquette out of rasa, or another example from the Chaitanya Charitamrita is Advaitacharya and Lord Nityananda calling each other ill names and fighting with each other. Another example is, this is also from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, is Murari Gupta. He first offered respects to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instead of offering respects to Lord Nityananda first. So that's a violation of etiquette, because Lord Nityananda was far older, at least from the external viewpoint, than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then we have the famous story, because I mentioned before that Krishna did not always follow the directions of Balaram. Then we have the famous story of Balaram arranging the marriage of Subhadra with Duryodhana. And then Krishna not wanting that to happen, because that would have been an absolute disaster as far as carrying out his mission, Paritranaya Sadhunam, Vinashaya Chadushkritam. It would also be an absolute disaster to have Yogamaya, that Subhadra, marry a demon. It wasn't really in the cards. So Krishna actually had to make this arrangement that Arjuna would kidnap Subhadra, and Balaram got angry at that. And so many times Krishna actually went against Balaram's desire. During the final fight, between Duryodhana and Bhimsen, and Krishna encouraged Bhimsen to hit Duryodhana below the belt. Balaram wanted to kill Bhimsen after that, and Krishna had to stop. So many times this happened. So there's a violation of etiquette in this particular case. Another story from the Chaitanya Charitamrita is that this devotee who used to make sweets in Navadvip for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was young, his name was Parameshwara Modaka, came to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy to see him, and this devotee actually started talking about his wife. Now, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very, very strict as far as hearing about ladies. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood it was a violation of etiquette, but he didn't say anything out of love for this particular devotee. Another violation of etiquette. So these are all examples of violations of etiquette for a higher purpose or out of ecstasy. Now, in the battle of Kurukshetra, Bhishma should have broken his promise, should have violated etiquette. You know, etiquette is keeping your promise, in order to fight on the right side and defend the Pandavas. So anyway, so there are many examples of this, and in this particular verse we find this violation of ordinary etiquette out of ecstasy, but we should not imitate that violation of etiquette. One has to be very, very, very careful in this regard, because as stated in the purport that we had read from the Srimad Bhagavatam, that if one violates the etiquette, one loses his duration of life, his opulence, fame, and piety, and the blessings of all the world. Anyway, so that's all I want to speak about this morning. So any questions? Yes?
Well, I was just thinking about a big violation of etiquette would have been Sukadeva Goswami instructing Parikshit when all these other very, very
Yeah, that's actually good.
sages were there, including his father. So how does that, in a sense, what is the mechanism that actually makes that not an offense?
I think the recognition of all the sages. The recognition of all, and also another point is that Shukadeva Goswami, here's another point, that Shukadeva Goswami was in the renounced order. You know, which is a higher level of etiquette, because, yeah, actually that's a good question. That in the Vedic system, the Brahman is considered to be the spiritual master of the other Varnas, and the sannyasi is considered to be the spiritual master of the Varnas and ashrams. Narada Muni was in the crowd? Anyway, so. I mean, it was accepted by the sages. Somehow or other, it was what they wanted to do. And also, you have another violation. Thank you for that question. With the, like Ramaharshana's sutta, even though we came from a mixed family, was actually posted as the one to speak to the sages at Naimisharanya. And then, of course, his son, Sutta Goswami, was appointed. And Sutta Goswami was certainly junior practically to everyone there. But this was the vote of the people there. So when the sages agree to something, then that can be done. So if the assembly agrees, then it can be done. For example, like Prabhupada would many times have a disciple give Bhagavatam class in front of him. Prabhupada would sit and listen to his disciples' Bhagavatam class. So the order of the guru actually overcomes any apparent violation of etiquette. So that answers the question.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah.
It seems to me that all of these things with the etiquette, all these rules,
Yeah.
really stem from something very basic, which is we learn to have respect.
Learn to have what?
Respect.
Respect, yeah.
because we have to recognize the Supreme Lord as being the Supreme Lord, and step by step, by practicing this respect, eventually we come to that point. And any society that has this kind of hierarchy is showing respect. It's actually acknowledging, I am humbling in front of you because you are at a higher level, for example. And unless we introduce that into our psyche, we're not going to make any progress.
Yes, actually, that's a very good point. Does anyone else have a question or a comment?
Did the blade of grass with Roma?
Yeah, Ramahoshan and Sutta, because he violated the etiquette. He violated the etiquette of not, he didn't pay respect to Balaram when Balaram walked in. Yeah.
Krishnadas Kaviraj's brother, he violated it also.
Yeah. Meenaketa Naramdas. Yeah, he disrespected Lord Balaram's or Lord Nityananda's devotee, and Lord Nityananda too. He didn't have faith in Lord Nityananda, so Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami left. So, any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Radha Gupta first offered those bases to Lord Chaitanya and then offered it to Nityananda, and then
Yeah.
Lord Chaitanya said that was not
It wasn't good, yeah.
proper. So that night I had a dream, and then next day he'd come back and offer those obeisances
changed
first to Nityananda.
Yeah, Lord Chaitanya corrected him. So, if there's no other questions, we can end.
Etiquette-wise, we might.
No, I mean, one should not, the devotee is amanina manadena kirtaniya sarahare chanadapi sunichena turori vashihishnana amanina manadena kirtaniya sarahare. We have to be more tolerant in the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, ready to offer all respects to others. So we should follow the etiquette, but at the same time, just because we may happen to be in a superior position externally, we should not think that we are superior. Just like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when his disciples would offer obeisances to him, he would say, Dasosmi. He said, I am your servant. So that was his attitude. Okay? Okay, we'll end. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All right. Okay. What happened? What?
Ligament in my ankle.
How did it happen?
It happened over a long period of time.
Oh.
And so it started hurting so much, I went there and said, you got to put a boot on it and rest it for at least 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
Well, at least it doesn't hurt all the time.
It's not something that just happened like all of a sudden.
It actually, it was like, it's like a carpal tunnel thing,
Oh.
Because I walk a lot and I have flat feet. And just wore out the ligament.
Wow. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Shri Radha Golokananda Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Budale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vacharani Navasesas Navadi Paschata Desh.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam
Tandar ako ikamaniya Vishesha Shobha
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Kriya Priti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham
Yeah.
Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami
Namaho Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Taminitina Vinay Taminitina Vinay Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurumani Pacharanay Nivasesha Sunyamade Shachade Sacharanay Rabani Pacharanay Nivasesha Sunyamade Vasachade Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gajara Sivasade Gauranga Vrindadaya Shri Krishna Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gajara Sivasade Gauranga Vrindadaya Shri Shri Advaita Gajara Sivasade Gauranga Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gajara Sivasade Gauranga Vrinda Advaita Gatana Siva Sati Gorakta Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jai Ram, Hare Jaya Radha, Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. Radhe, Jaya Radhe, 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 Jaya Shri Radhe, Jai Om Vishnupad. Paramahansa Paravatikacharya, also Teta Satashi Shimad. His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananda Goti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shitwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavanam ki jai. Mathuram ki jai. Jagadata Sami ki jai. Yamunamai ki jai. Srimati Lasi Devi ki jai. Samaved Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premananda Haribol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddhaya Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Stays this way and he says in the Bhakti Prasthaya Shikshashtaka
Chaitodarpanam Marjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairavya Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipranam Pranamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapita